Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast, where we're joined by your hosts, Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. In each episode, we'll be sharing valuable insights and tips to help you turn your NDIS business into a profitable venture. So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, you've come to the right place. Let's stop surviving and start thriving.
Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast. My name is Paul, and we are here today tackling the elephant in the room, the impending shift towards mandatory registration and tighter regulation. We're going to be discussing why the transition is a bit of a shock to the system and the true cost of all the compliance, and why we believe that there's going to be a very big shift over the next couple of years. I fortunately am joined today by my amazing co-host, Tania Gomez, and we're going to have a great chat through this.
Yeah, Paul, it's not the nicest topic to be talking about, but I think we actually need to put it out there and we need to start talking about what we're seeing. I've been presenting and talking about the reform in lots of places, and I'm really still shocked at how many people don't see what I see and aren't seeing the writing on the wall so that they can start better preparing their businesses for, what is the future over the next couple of years is going to look like in the NDIS space.
It's really interesting that a lot of people are really not looking at where all the ducks are lining up for and what's happening there. So let's set the scene a little bit here, Tania. We're hearing the whispers and looking at all the task force recommendations for a while now about providers and small providers existing and what that really looks like on the ground. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm seeing from my vantage point is just the NDIS as we know it is actually over. It is NDIS 2.0 now. The last 10, 13, 14 years have now been the good old days, and we are moving into a completely different scheme. And the indications that I have around that is, firstly, the definition or the intention of the scheme has changed. It's no longer choice and control. It's now choice and control within budgetary confinements. We're now moving from it being a scheme about social access and social equality to actually being around budgetary controls. And my understanding is that this has gone beyond the NDIA. The Treasury Department have now looked at the NDIS and said, we can't continue, this needs to change. And that was really indicated in Mark Butler's speech in April, where he started talking about a whole lot of things, but that has actually been implemented really quickly throughout government. And we can see that in the introduction of differentiated pricing, or the suggestion of differentiated pricing. We had the NDIS Integrity and Safeguarding Act, which was called Bill number 2, which we talked about previously, has now passed and is in force. And that has huge penalties for providers, including up to 5 years in jail for some penalties. And also this idea of commissioning. So from my perspective, the NDIS used to have 36 registration groups and a whole bunch of different providers. We had plan managers, support coordinators, core providers, core supports, community access providers, respite providers, SIL providers, assistive tech providers, allied health providers, early childhood providers, a whole lot of providers. And providers identify themselves by, I am an early childhood provider, I am an allied health provider. And we use the wording of the scheme. But a whole bunch of those people are no longer going to be providers under what has already passed or what is being proposed to be passed. So plan managers are exiting the scheme in October next year, moving to a commissioned model. And my understanding is they'll choose the 10 top plan managers or the 10 ones, and they will put it out to tender, and they will go through a tender process, and they will then tender the work to them under a different arrangement. So they won't be an NDIS provider. It'll be an arrangement similar to what the LACs are currently. And the same for support coordinators. They are then also moving to a commissioned model, and 10 support coordinators will remain. That's happening. Early childhood providers have been on the chopping block or in the hot seat for quite some time, and we're seeing that the tenders for the early childhood providers under Thriving Kids has gone out in WA and New South Wales. I haven't seen the other states as yet, but it's really clear that they are going to not-for-profit organisations. And so early childhood providers won't remain the same in the scheme like they are now. You may have some key workers and you may have some people who will continue doing early childhood support for people with significant disabilities, but I think it's going to be a tenth of what it is now. So 90% of early childhood funding will move from the NDIS to Thriving Kids, and therefore the providers will also exit the scheme. So we've got 3 big players moving from the scheme. We also have 50% of cuts to community access providers and a 10% less payment for any unregistered community access providers. We have huge fundings to respite, which is killing or blowing out of the water all of their respite camp ideas and business models that have been happening. It's really not possible now to do respite outside of a home you own, and it is, what's been called a nursing style type of respite where we play bingo in a room. No more adventure camps, no more things like that. Just simply won't be able to be possible in the funding that's provided. So there's a huge reduction. And if the NDIS was, let's say 100%, it's now being tightened in to about a 50% of what it was from providers, from participants, from all of those things. And we currently have around 200,000 providers, unregistered and registered. I really think we'll end up somewhere between 10 and 15,000 providers, all of them registered, by the time you move everyone out of the commissioning model. We're also losing SIL to a commissioning model, potentially has been suggested that that's in the pipeline. On top of that, we also have changes to participant funding, like the ICANN assessments, which will reduce. They're looking to exit 250,000 participants from the scheme and move them back into mainstream supports. So that means for a provider, if you are a core supports provider who is left in the scheme, and there are others that are left in the scheme, but if you are one of the ones left in the scheme, you're going to have less participants. You're not, the growth rate has moved from 22% to 4%, so maybe just a tiny trickle of new participants into the scheme. Your business is going to look very differently, and the ecosystem is going to look very differently. And I really think that about 50% of current providers won't be here in 2 to 3 years' time.
100%. There's a lot to unpack there, because at first glance, a lot of people listen to that and go, holy crap, am I going to be here? What is it going to look like for me? How am I going to manage this? Will I have a business? But I also think there's a lot of opportunity in this sort of a space as well, because we've seen a lot of businesses grow up inside the NDIS and launch under the framework that was. But I think everyone can sort of see there's been larger established providers who have gone out of business. And the key reason for that is that they weren't able to adapt their model. They weren't able to look at what was happening and go, right, we're going to pivot this way and make decisions. But that's actually one of the key opportunities for a small to mid-sized provider, is the fact that they can pivot. And so there is that opportunity to be able to go, right, this is where we see it going. And make no mistake, you can plot this on a graph. You can see where things are heading. Does this work for us, or do we need to look at other options as well?
Yeah, I think both. I think we need to look at other options anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Right. There's a lot of people out there who I've spoken to who are kind of, I think, putting their head in the sand a little bit, hoping that it will all go back to the way it was if we just shout loud enough. And I think there is value in petition and value in activating your ability to vote, to have a voice, and all that sort of thing. But you said it at the beginning of this episode, is that the NDIS as we know it is over. That is changing. We've called it NDIS 2.0, and just having an understanding as a business owner in this space that things are changing. So, and we've both said this, what got you here won't get you there. So changing the model of thinking, changing the way you look at this is going to be really important. And we spoke this a little while ago. It's actually okay to go, you know what, this was great, but what's my next thing?
Yeah.
That's also an option as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we will do an episode around where to from here and like what kind of are the other options. But I think it's important for people to start thinking about all of these changes and what they mean over the couple of years. And really, do they want to continue in this scheme? Is this actually something they want to continue? Or is it worth them having a look at taking a job, consolidating, or merging with another business and becoming a manager in that business, maybe moving with your participants to a larger provider and you taking a management job and continue to supporting them, or other types of consolidation. I'm seeing lots of consolidation. I'm seeing a lot of very large businesses in the space become even larger. And I really do think that the small providers will be a thing of the past, just because of the costs of regulation, because of the costs with you really need volume of clients to be able to sustain the small profit margins and the amount of administrative burden in the scheme. So I don't think small businesses can maintain that. I'm not saying I don't think they're valuable. I do. I love small businesses. I am a small business owner, have been for 20 years. I'm simply saying I think it is not viable for small businesses to maintain in the space. And I think that's the point from the government's perspective. I don't think they want to regulate small businesses. I think they want to regulate a handful of big businesses, just like they do in home care, just like they do in private hospitals, just like they do in universities, just like they do in childcare centres. There isn't 200,000 small businesses in many other government schemes, if any. I really think that we're moving back, not as far as block model. I don't think we're going to go back to prior to NDIS. If we talk about prior to NDIS as being 1 and NDIS being 2, I think we'll end up at 1.5, somewhere between the two.
Yeah. And you can have all the opinions you like about whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, what you think of large providers, what you think of the funding model, what you believe that people deserve and don't deserve. But at the end of the day, when decisions are made, it's not necessarily about what people deserve, it's about what's actually being able to be funded. And so if you look at this next period of time of this was great to have this business operating like this. However, we need to now make a decision of and as we've looked at this, if you're in plan management, support coordination, early childhood, these sort of areas, you need to really think about, right, what is my next step? Because it's not more NDIS, right? It's not growing in that space. It's not that. So what is the model that you're going to look at? But also, with all the things that are happening at the moment, Tania, we've looked at this idea of, SIL is obviously being a main focus for the government and what that looks like. They've really lent into the mandatory registration. They've given a whole new line item for it. They've lent into that. That's telling us it's staying. But how do providers who do stay in this position keep themselves in the right position to be able to ethically take on probably an influx of market share as unregistered providers leave, as small providers go, this is too difficult? How does a good, larger, mid to larger size provider continue to grow and not just probably get overwhelmed with what would be a market share influx?
Yeah, so the larger providers that I work with are already doing this really well. To begin with, you need to have a brand in the space. People need to know you and know you for the good service you deliver. So none of this negates being a crap operator. You still need to be a good operator. However, being a good operator is just the foundation. Then people need to know about you and know you're a good operator. So branding and positioning in the market and market stewardship and market leadership is really important at the moment, because the more people look to you as an amazing figure, the more that these other small businesses are going to be comfortable giving you their babies, right? These businesses have been probably their first business, probably their life. blood, sweat, tears. They're not going to hand over all of this to just anyone. They're going to do to someone who they know and trust. So being known and trusted in the space right now is really important. People knowing your brand, knowing the leaders in those businesses, and having good relationships. And personally, I think this is maybe an area that the not-for-profits haven't done well because they've kept themselves so separate from the private market. But I have a couple of clients who are very large in the for-profit space who have done this really well, who are picking up businesses left, right, and center. I had one client pick up 35 new SIL houses recently because another business decided to exit the space and said, would you like to take over these assets and keep running them? And those things are going to happen more and more. So your network has never been more important, and people knowing and trusting you, whatever that looks like in your space.
Yeah. 100%. And I think there's also, that's from the providers that are going to stay. I'm going to look at this from the providers that are kind of going, I don't think I can manage probably what is coming. I've got 3 SIL homes and a great team, and I love who I'm working with, but I don't want to be a 20 SIL home provider. I've never wanted to be that. I want to have a group of people that I can really make a difference for. This is, to be brutally honest, where I'd be really looking at, right, who is in my network? What trust relationships can I build? Because at some point, you probably will be approached by a larger provider saying, hey, we'd love to come on. Have you done your due diligence about where they're going? Do you trust this provider? And to be honest, do you look at it and go, yeah, look, I'd love to come into your organization and be a leader of these houses, because it's a great opportunity for you to not just hand on a business, but also move into a leadership role in a well-organized operating business that you can continue to grow and thrive in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. I think it's also important to start thinking about where your skills apply outside of the scheme, what else you can do outside of the scheme, and just going back to what you said, I don't necessarily think that SIL is completely safe either. SIL, although they're making it mandatory registration, they have been talking about a commissioning model, which means that they don't know when, they haven't set a date. But if commissioning goes really well for support coordination and plan management, there would be no reason they also wouldn't establish 10 big SIL providers. So I think everyone needs to start thinking about, am I going to be a big player in this space? And if I'm not, what's my alternative? Can I be a medium place? And I asked a friend of mine who is an ex-director at the NDIA what big looks like in SIL, and internally they consider anybody who has more than 10 houses or 40 participants as medium. So if you don't have 10 houses or 40 participants, then you're considered small, and you probably, it's going to be too costly for you to continue when all these changes finish rolling out. And it's going to be 2 or 3 years till all these things actually are hitting, but they're coming. So you've kind of got a 2 to 3 year exit plan. Similar to what we know about plan managers and support coordinators, I'm heavily talking to my plan management clients and support coordination clients about moving into one of the larger providers, or 10 smaller providers banding together as an association or a consortia, or another business entity type to continue operating. I'm also seeing a trend of large for-profit businesses becoming not-for-profits, because a lot of the tendering has been specifically targeting not-for-profit space.
Yeah. So as you said, there is a couple of year runway here. The trap for many people is being in that freeze moment where you just kind of go, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to sit and wait. That is not your strategy right now. The strategy is to look at this, make some sober decisions, go, I'm in a position in my business where we can take the next 12, 18 months, lean in, grow, do this thing, make the strategic decisions to not-for-profit or to consolidate with other providers and build that plan. Or go, you know what? I could have a strategic exit right now from my business, sell on, move in, and develop a new business. And there are many opportunities. There are so many opportunities for good people to build great businesses outside of the scheme.
Yeah, and also I think that the exiting of these players from the scheme will create opportunities outside of the scheme. So currently, if we look at allied health, we have so many allied health providers. I think they do amazing jobs, just prefacing. None of this is against them. Early childhood teacher, I think they do amazing work, very important work. But I'm seeing like the families that rely on early childhood providers have put all their eggs in the basket. Once that is removed and they have to go wait on a wait list again in a public sector, and either do that, they'll either start families like me. If I had a child with disability, I wouldn't wait on a 2-year wait list because early intervention is so important, in development, and I have the money to pay. So I would start paying privately, and I think a lot of families will, and I think the government know that and also like that. Some families will also move on to Medicare and see people through Medicare. So there's an opportunity there. But the removal of these support networks for these families will create other needs that families currently are being met by these service providers. The same as support coordinators. If support coordination moves to a navigator role run by an LAC who doesn't know their participants, has no relationship with them, doesn't guide them through the process like a good support coordinator currently does, those needs don't go away. Other businesses, whatever they're called, could be formed to create those needs under a payment model of some description. I do have I'm not sure she's a client, but I have a contact who runs a monthly online program for families that get diagnosis with children with disability to support them through that diagnosis process. I think it's $40 a month that families pay to access their online community. They have online events, they have support resources, and she has clients in that now, even with those supports. Once those supports completely disappear, families will pay for support. People will pay for things if there are no government-funded options. Probably not as much, but there will be opportunities in that space if you're in that play, if you're already playing in there. The same for plan management. Plan management is a lot more than processing an invoice. And if that service isn't there or it's done in another way, there will be all these other opportunities to support people potentially outside of the scheme offerings.
I look at this as a business coach and go, this is actually really exciting. When we have things that are difficult, it breeds new invention, it breeds innovation, and people start to look at things differently. So while it might be difficult at the moment, this is an opportunity to step up, be creative, find the things and look at it like, where will the gaps turn up? What could I do in that space? And as you said, you've got clients that are in that space. We've got clients, we've literally built out this with about 10 clients now, and we're going through with the rest of them at the moment, is actually building out, services that are not funding dependent, people that really want it. Because I'm one of those people as well. My dad is in aged care, but I want more services for him. So my family and we pay for things out of pocket, and we get the things that we need because that's what I want to have for him. So you're 100% right. People will pay, and to think that no one will would probably be a little bit arrogant, thinking that just because someone has a disability or a family has a disability that they can't afford or won't invest in something that they believe is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to that principle that I spoke about at your summit, Paul, around that Ikigai principle, right? What are you the best in the world at? What can you earn money for? And what do you have a passion for? Is that the same thing? Yeah. So your skills, your passion, and what someone will pay for. If you can combine those three, there's a business there. And and I'm a perfect example. Who would have thought that somebody would pay me to help them guide them through an audit process? I certainly didn't wake up one day and say, I didn't copy this from anyone. I don't know anybody else who does this. I know people who have copied me, but outside of them, I don't know anybody else that coaches people through an audit process. I know there's consultants out there, and I kind of do something a little bit different, but I have an online platform, an online community. We have events, we have podcasts, we have books, we have a magazine. I don't know anybody else that does these things.
100%.
I've seen what I do best in the world, what someone will pay for, and what my skill set delivers, and what I love to do. And I've merged those things together and made up a job, made up a business out of those things. And I think everybody can do that if they're in the right niche and have the right skill set and have the right capacity and resources.
and a small propensity for risk, which is just a little bit fun as well. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot to unpack here, and we're gonna leave this here because there's lots of things to think about. And in our next episode, we're going to really look at diversification. Where to from here? We'd love you to join us. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tania.
Of course.
Let's jump in to next episode next week or next fortnight. And we hope you guys enjoyed listening. Please get out there and share it because a lot of people need to hear this as well.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
NDIS Provider Podcast with Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. We hope you found today's episode informative and valuable. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, and share it with others who could benefit from our insights. Until next time, keep thriving.